Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a weird few days across Canada because the neo-Nazi Federal Party leader that was spewing hatred against the Jews has just been sentenced to 1 year in jail by a Saskatchewan court for hate speech. But going back in the history of Canada, he's not the first person to rag about the Jews, deny the Holocaust, different methods of denying what the world went through from 1933 to about 1945. One of them was probably the most infamous teacher in New Brunswick history, who was a hero to free speech in New Brunswick. So today we're talking about the Winnipeg-born, New Brunswick-based teacher, Malcolm Ross. Now, Malcolm Ross is a former Canadian school teacher from Moncton, New Brunswick, beautiful community, who became notable for his anti-Semitic writings, including several books. Now, the books included anti-abortion rhetoric, Holocaust denial, saying that the Jews were controlling the banks and the media. Now, his alma mater was University of New Brunswick. Now, born in Winnipeg, May 1946, his father was a Presbyterian minister. Now, the family eventually moved to Newcastle, New Brunswick when Ross was young, and he graduated from high school there. In 1968, he graduated from University of New Brunswick with a Bachelor of Education. In 1976, Ross began teaching at Magnetic Hill School. In 1978, he published his first book titled Web of Deceit. In the tome, Ross attacked the diary of Anne Frank and declared the Holocaust a hoax. In 1983, Ross published a book entitled The Real Holocaust, The Attack on Unborn Children and Life Itself, which combined anti-abortion views with anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. In 1988, he published Spectre of Power, which spoke of his experiences with critics. Now, eventually, in 1991, a local Jewish parent, David Addis, filed a human rights complaint against Ross's employers, New Brunswick School District 15, on the grounds that Ross's continued employment created a poisoned environment for Jewish students, including Addis's daughter, who, although not a student at Magnetic Hill, where Ross taught, had been intimidated out of attending interscholastic activities at the facility. Now, after a lengthy hearing during which Ross was represented by all people, white supremacist separatists, Doug Crispy will be talking with him in a future podcast, one of the strangest lawyers in Canadian history. The Human Rights Boards of Inquiry ordered the district to remove Ross from the classroom and to terminate his employment unless Ross's school could find a non-teaching position for him. Ironically, we all know the Nazis burned books. Guess what they made him, ladies and gentlemen? The school librarian. Now, that was a genius move. In addition, the district warned Ross that if he continued to publish or distribute anti-Semitic literature, his non-teaching position would be terminated as well. Addis was not awarded any damages. Now, a lot of the members of the media, including my former boss, David Cadogan, basically said he had a right to say it. Free speech advocates were taking his side, even though they weren't taking the side of his views. Eventually, the New Brunswick Court of Appeal ruled that these decisions were in violation of Ross's rights to freedom of religion and freedom of expression, which was in the Charter, and overturned the district's orders. However, in 1996, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that Ross's removal from the classroom was justifiable on the grounds that although it did not constitute a violation of his freedoms, there was a reasonable limit as school teachers must be held to a higher standard of behavior. Now, the court further ruled that the district's gag order that Ross be dismissed from his non-teaching position should he continue to publish and distribute anti-Semitic material was invalid. Basically, they said if you do something on the side that doesn't involve the classroom, it's okay. But in 2000, Ross's application to get this, the UN Human Rights Committee, which a lot of neo-Nazis and white supremacists don't believe in, was rejected, stating that the removal of the author from a teaching position can be considered a restriction necessary to protect the right and freedom of Jewish children to have a school system that is free from bias, prejudice, and intolerance. Now, in 1998, in another twist, Ross filed a defamation lawsuit against the famed cartoonist Josh Boutel, who was an editorial cartoonist at the time for The Telegraph, which had compared Ross to Joseph Goebbels. Now, you would think a pro-Nazi, anti-Jew person would be glad that the Minister of Information for Hitler would be referred to him, but he took it as an insult. Now, Butel had done cartoon work for my former paper, the Campbellton Tribune. He did my caricature for a column called 2 cents worth. And just to be totally frank here, I didn't agree with all that Josh did over the years, but he has a right to expression as well. However, the Court of Queen's Bench in New Brunswick ruled that as Nazism was an anti-religious philosophy, and Ross was profoundly religious, Ross's extreme degree of anti-Semitism could not fairly be labeled as Nazistic. The Queen's Bench ordered Butel to pay Ross $7,500 in damages. However, 2 years later, when the UN appeal was going on, the New Brunswick Court of Appeal overturned this decision. Now, I'm posting a version of the cartoon for you to take a look at it. Now, I covered Malcolm Ross directly and indirectly because Dave Cadogan, who came out in support of what Ross had to say, the famous CBC roundtable interview, I don't really believe that the majority of people really took him seriously. He may have been a smart person to himself, but I found him to be a very mediocre person mentally and with his views, because what he was mixing philosophies. He was mixing anti-abortion with Nazism, and we all know that Nazis hated people that were mentally challenged and an Aryan race. In some cases, they promoted abortions if it was mixed race children and stuff like that. They wanted purity of race. We all know in 1936 Olympics there were these women that were waiting for the pure athletes to have more Aryan children. So in a way they supported abortion or terminated pregnancies that didn't involve purely Aryan children. He was mixing too many things at once. When people criticized him, he saw them. It was the Jews that were behind him, and the Jews running the media. Well, I hate to tell you, there's not too many Jews in the CBC or the CTV. Yes, you have the Bronfants and different companies, but their immediate interest was in sports. It wasn't in. And there's always a connection with right-wingers and trying to stop the CBC. They don't criticize CTV or Global. They're obsessed with the CBC because it's tax money that's going towards it, but tax money goes to support CTV and independent productions, which eventually supports their news group. It's all bizarre. But all I know, ladies and gentlemen, in 2022, if you think that white supremacy started with Trump, Canada was a ground base for the KKK throughout New Brunswick, Maritime, Saskatchewan in the early to mid 1920s. They were holding a lot of power in the Saskatchewan government. There was KKK supporters who were MLAs in New Brunswick. And there was Nazism before the KKK was the first Nazism in Canada. But Nazism and KKK don't work together because with Nazism, as we all know, a lot of the Nazis are not anti-French because the French supported the Nazis. In the Second World War, a big part of France was capitulators, and in Holland, different countries. So it's 6 of one and a half dozen the other. All I know is that Malcolm Ross was a firing line for debate on free speech, because he was not only, I don't think he was saying much in the classroom, but just his presence. When you say Malcolm Ross to people of a certain age, I'm 57, automatically comes up, a teacher like that should not be in the classroom. If he wants to write his books, that's fine. But he shouldn't be teaching, because him in the classroom would be a reminder to maybe to check out the book and what it has to say, and that's wrong. It's like for me to be a gambler on the side, and I'm teaching the kids, well, maybe the kids would become gamblers because they're impressed by what my predictions on the Blue Jays or the Canadians or the Leafs or whatever. So again, the Malcolm Ross era went from pretty much 78 to 2000, and ironically, the core party in New Brunswick, a right-wing, white Anglo party, never reached out to Malcolm Ross, and Malcolm Ross, I don't think, ever tried to join the party. So at least with the core party, they never tried to embrace Malcolm Ross. I don't remember anybody in the core party said, I think Malcolm Ross is this and that. They never did that, because the core party was just basically a more right-wing PCs that didn't want the French. And he grew from the anti-French movement. But at no time did I hear Malcolm Ross talk about being purely anti-French. So, anyway. So, ladies and gentlemen, the next one will be on Doug Christie. We appreciate you listening. We provide this as a public service, not to exploit the situation, but just to remind people that, yes, there's left-wingers and right-wingers long before what's been happening. And you know something? If QAnon was around back then, he would probably be a charter member. That's all I can say. Thanks for listening. Bye.